Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another installment of the Max Danielsen Show. I'm your host, Max Danielsen, and joining me today, we have another special guest on the show. He's a member of the Austin College baseball team and is undoubtedly the smartest on the team, without a question. That is Mr. Jon Voos. Jon, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, Max.
It's always great to have, of course, another guest, and especially someone like you that knows a lot about what they're talking about, especially with sports, or even so with everything else.
We'll see when it gets to the NHL stuff. But
yeah, that's with most of my guests on this show, that some of them don't know a lot about NHL, but that's okay. Usually we just breeze through it.
Hockey's a commie sport.
Okay. So one thing I always ask my guests when I start off, first of all, we know that you go to Austin College, and we know that you're on the baseball team. But other than that, what do you do here at Austin College, and as well, what your favorite sports teams are?
So at Austin College, I am currently a political science and economics major, and I am the treasurer of the Austin College Pre-Law Society. I'm from San Antonio, so I'm a big Spurs fan. And then because San Antonio has no other professional teams, I kind of jump around in other sports. So I'm a Rangers fan in baseball. I'm a Texans fan in football, and then I tend to like the Boston team, so I like the Red Sox and the Patriots.
Gotcha. That's a little bit interesting. Now, do you have family up in the New England area? Or?
My grandpa is from Boston. Yes.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. That's kind of like the same thing with me and the Green Bay Packers. So that's good to hear about that. Alrighty. Well, without further ado, let's jump right in. One of the biggest news breaks of this week was Tua going down with a big hip injury. A lot of people were saying it's kind of like the same that Bo Jackson had that ended his career prematurely. And I want to ask you two questions about this. Number one, how do you think this affects his draft stock, if it does at all? Because we do know he is a top-tier quarterback. He is a very elite quarterback. He's shown that throughout the college football season. And as well, how does this hurt his Heisman campaign?
Well, for one, he's not going to win the Heisman. I think we both know that. He wasn't the leader, I don't believe, in the Heisman running anyways. I think that would
Joe
go to Joe
yeah.
Burrow for sure.
And he's having one hell of a season.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think it's tank for Joe, not tank for Tua. But
unless you're the Dolphins, of course.
That is very true, or the Browns. But they're still...
Do you think the Browns would take a quarterback?
Yes.
Really? You think that...
Not this year, next year, or in 2 years. I don't think Baker's going to pan out.
You think they're going to give up on Baker right away?
Look how fast they gave up on Johnny.
Yeah, that's a good point. But then again, he did get in a lot of trouble. And like I keep saying on this podcast, that Baker is definitely the sober Johnny Manziel, and that's exactly kind of the potential that he has. And we've seen games where Baker has improved drastically, and he's had great games. But then you see some of those where he throws a touchdown and then 3 interceptions. So it's on and off with him.
Yeah, which it's another Jameis Winston situation. But back to Tua. You talked about the Bo Jackson comparison in terms of the injury.
Yeah.
The difference between Tua's injury and Bo Jackson's injury is that Bo Jackson continued to play on it for a few weeks beforehand.
That is very true, yeah.
It made it even worse. Tua, they figured it out right away. The surgery was clean. There was no complications to it. I think he should be back healthy in whatever time frame has been given to him. And I think he won't really lose anything in terms of his mobility. I mean, obviously with an injury like that, it's going to take a while to come back. I've had my fair share of leg injuries, so I know nothing ever as severe as that. I mean, it's gonna take some work, and whoever drafts him shouldn't be looking to start him, I believe, in this upcoming 2020 season. But he definitely still has a lot of potential down the road with Joe Burrow and Oregon quarterback Justin Herbert in the draft. I think there is...
And you got to remember, there's also Jalen Hurts.
There is Jalen Hurts as well. I'm not as convinced of his pro potential, but he definitely can be a really good quarterback, as he's proved with Oklahoma. But Oklahoma quarterbacks under Lincoln Riley are to be determined still in how they'll actually pan out in the NFL. Kyler's been playing well this year, but there's still a big question mark of whether people from Lincoln Riley's system can pan out to be a superstar NFL quarterback. So I don't think anyone really at this point is looking at Jalen Hurts as a superstar. He isn't. Like, Lamar Jackson was the 5th quarterback taken in the draft. He was drafted in, but with Jackson, he showed that superstar potential in college, and he still really had high projections regardless of what position he played. Jalen Hurts doesn't have that sort of athleticism or even arm strength as other quarterbacks in the draft. So I'm just not as convinced that he's going to – I think he's definitely startable, but I'm not convinced that he'll be better than Joe Burrow or Tua. And I'm not familiar enough with Justin Herbert's game to put any input on him, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think Tua slips to around pick 9 or 10.
Okay. I mean, that's not too bad. It's not going to be a Johnny Manziel where he slips all the way down to 22.
Oh, no, definitely not.
But I definitely like your point about the whole Lincoln Riley thing. And the number one thing, in my opinion, why Baker has not been playing to his potential so far is because when you look at the Big 12, it's an offense-dominated conference. There's not much defense, so of course it's going to be a culture shock for Baker coming into that. And for Kyler, even though there wasn't that, he's still on one of the worst teams in the NFL, and he wasn't put on a team that has all this caliber of talent, like, for example, Jarvis Landry and OBJ.
Oh, for sure.
And as well, Nick Chubb. I mean, you look at the Browns on paper, and they have a great team. It's just the problem of they can't work together to get those wins. And, I mean, I definitely would say they're having a decent season, but definitely nowhere close to what they were projected. Everyone projected them basically Super Bowl contenders or bust. And right
I said
now,
they were going to be 7-9 at the beginning of the year. I'm looking.
I mean, that's
right
what
now.
it's looking like that. I mean,
But
honestly, that was probably my prediction too, because especially even getting OBJ and Jarvis and
that's all you got to say.
That's literally all you have to say. And even so, even though OBJ and Jarvis both played on the same team in college, they're best buddies. We've seen that countless times when they squared off against each other. It's also not only rekindling that chemistry, but also working under a whole new QB scheme with Baker Mayfield and trying to develop to his game versus where OBJ was with New York, and he had Eli Manning. And even though Eli Manning was going down, he already established himself as a dominant quarterback in the NFL. And I mean, the Manning twins, and even so, the whole Manning family as a whole, they're going to produce good football players. And also, like, who was the other guy who I was just thinking? Oh, yeah. And even so, where Jarvis Landry came from with, at one point, Ryan Tannehill was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. So he's had...
Define better.
Well, I mean, you think of what a lot of quarterbacks are. I mean,
I put him in maybe in the 15 to 20 range at some point. I wouldn't.
That's an average quarterback.
He was an average quarterback, yeah.
I mean, at the hype of when he was doing really well, yeah, he was. I would argue maybe anywhere from 10 to 15 when he was at his peak. But then again, that is a very debatable question because you have to also look at the problem with Ryan Tannehill, and this is what followed him throughout his career, is the inconsistency that he had. Some weeks he'd just go off, he'd put up humongous numbers, and then other weeks he'd play like Baker Mayfield. So I think for Jarvis, maybe that's an easier one, but at the same time, with OBJ, you're going onto a whole new quarterback scheme. And even so, thing that I just realized here is that you have to give the same amount of touches basically to Jarvis and OBJ because they both have that superstar caliber
honestly don't
personnel
think,
and team.
I think OBJ has more talent than Jarvis, but the way slot receivers are used in the NFL is the reason why Jarvis has had so many touches in recent years. The star quarterbacks are obviously on the outside, so Jarvis takes advantage of matchups against weaker nickelbacks. Like, that's generally been where he goes off, especially in terms of fantasy points. Like, there's a high correlation between him facing a bottom 16 nickelback and him putting up 10, 15 points when he's on the Dolphins. Jarvis is more historically prone to matchups, like prone to falling prey to good matchups versus bad matchups in terms of how he produces, whereas OBJ up until this year has been a superstar regardless of his matchup.
Yeah.
So this year it's more of a quarterback problem than anything else for both of them, and that's what ultimately comes down to who calls the plays for the Browns. Like,
I have no clue.
Like,
since
just the amount of talent they have, especially with even Kareem Hunt back now, David Njoku at tight end.
Yeah,
they have. I mean, their O-line's not great, but it's not terrible either.
It's not
they're
bad.
Middle of the pack. I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't be a top 10 offense at least. And
100%. And even so, their defense isn't bad either. It's not the greatest in the world. Don't get me wrong.
They're young.
And that's the one thing that I like about the Browns is they are an extremely, extremely young team. and they got a lot to prove. But going back on with like the whole Jalen Hurts thing, the biggest thing in college football, besides the Tua, was number 10 OU mounting this historic 28-3, wherever we heard that before.
Go Pats. No.
Yeah. The comeback against number 13 Baylor with the score 34-31. I actually was very close to going to that game with my roommate, but they had college game day there, and we'd had to get there at 5 a.m., and I was not for that because the night before, some of the baseball guys and us were all doing something. I know we went to Walmart, made a Walmart run.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's the one thing
Yeah,
that the baseball player.
Sherm and I stayed in the pub and played pool for about 2 hours instead of going.
Oh, yeah, that was it. That's right. But yeah, and I just caught a glimpse of the game. Or actually, we were actually watching it at the flat.
Yeah, we were.
And it was an and Jalen Hurts went off too. He went 30-42, threw 297 yards in the air, and also had 4 touchdowns while throwing 1 interception. I want to ask you, how do you think now this fares for OU? And even so, how does this hurt Baylor?
Well, neither of them are getting into the college football playoff. I think Baylor has no chance now.
Yeah.
Oklahoma has a slim chance, but if it comes down to a one-loss SEC team in Oklahoma or even a one-loss Big Ten team, I think the Big Ten or SEC team gets in. And Oklahoma lost to who? Kansas State or who?
Yeah, Kansas State.
That's
that was a bad game.
That's not an ideal loss. Like Alabama's loss is to LSU. I mean, that's the best loss you can have at this point. There isn't a lot Oklahoma can do but hope a bunch of other teams lose.
Yeah,
and it's interesting to see. The Big 12 needs to figure out how to improve their strength of schedule if they want to get any one-loss teams into the playoff. And that starts with better recruiting of defensive players, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it'll be interesting seeing it, and all of them to stop having their random one loss to somebody. Like, when's the last time a Big 12 team, like Oklahoma went undefeated last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been recently a pretty rare occurrence that any Big 12 team gets through the gauntlet without a loss.
Yeah, and even so, like going up, like you said, against an SEC team, that's arguably the best conference in college football. But I wanted to go
Besides
back on
the MAC. No, I'm kidding.
But another one, going back onto that OU Kansas State game, that game was actually jinxed by Austin Coe on the podcast. The next segment that we got here, we'll talk about predictions for this week for college football. And for 2 weeks running, both of the guests on my show, they called games saying that each of them were going to get blown out, and then ended up being humongous upsets. That's Cody Goggins with Illinois beating Wisconsin. He said Wisconsin was going to absolutely obliterate Illinois. And then Austin Coe actually got 2 wrong. He said TCU was going to lose to Texas, and they ended up winning. And then OU, of course, got lost to Kansas State. So no pressure on that. But while we divert to that topic, let's go look at some of the biggest ones this week.
So what you're saying is that I should say whoever that you're rooting for is winning so that they lose?
If you want to do it that way, you're all for that. Alrighty, let's start off here. Let's see what matchups we got here.
Oklahoma and Oklahoma State's coming up. I know.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be a big one. While we're talking about Oklahoma.
That's the following week, though, not this
Yeah,
week.
but while we're on the topic of Oklahoma State, number 22, Oklahoma State at West Virginia.
I'm honestly going to say... I think it'll be a close game. I'd have to... In terms of... I think it's one I'd take the over in for sure. But this ESPN has it Oklahoma State -6. I think that's honestly about right. Oklahoma State winning in a close one. So I'm going to stick with ESPN on this one.
Alrighty, trusting the gut there. All right, next one we got number 11, Minnesota at Northwestern. And this is the big thing, especially with playing a ranked team at home, is that there is that opportunity for an upset, especially playing in a different stadium, playing in a different atmosphere is always hard for players, no matter what level you're at. but especially with Northwestern. If you don't remember last year, their big hype man.
Scary. Yeah, for sure. They're 2-8 this year. I don't see them pulling the upset on Minnesota, but I definitely do see them giving them a game. But we also got to remember, it's Minnesota. They are ranked 10 this year. They did just... Who'd they play last week?
Oh, Lord. They were 17.
They beat Penn State last week.
Penn State, that's what it was,
They upset Penn State last week and rushed the field for upsetting Penn State. That was interesting.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, Penn State was the number 4 team in the country.
And it's Minnesota.
Yeah. I mean, heck, you could talk about Austin College with that when they beat Center. Yeah. And they're... Now,
you can't call that rushing the field. There weren't enough people.
Okay, so for the viewers who were not there, let me explain how this all went down. So, Austin College was playing the number 20 team in the country for Division III football, and we thought we were going to get absolutely blown out. Turns out that Austin College actually made a very close game. They held them at the line at the very last second to win the game. And now that week, for 3 weeks, I had to work the balls because no other freshmen decided to step up. And basically, I'm looking down towards our student section, and I see that there are people on the ropes because they have like this little rope that like secludes the field from the from the home student stands. And I was like, they're really gonna rush the field. And I kid you not, there was, and I could count this. There were 5 people that rushed the field. It was the saddest rush I've ever seen because not only there were only 5 fans, but on top of that, the last play of the game was on the opposite side of the field, so they had to run the whole length of the football field. And by the halfway point, when they got to the 50-yard line, they just started walking. It was fun to watch. It definitely not as fun as it would be going to a big school. Mm-hmm. But hey,
D3 lives matter.
Hey, D3 lives matter. That's the number one thing. Next game we got here, while we're on the topic of Penn State, number 9, Penn State at number 2, Ohio State.
I like Justin Fields. Going to go Ohio State.
All right, that's a safe bet on that one. Okay, we'll see how this one works. Second go around, Illinois at number 19, Iowa.
That's a tough one. Iowa's a heavy favorite in this game, but honestly, I don't think they'll cover the spread of negative 15.5. I see Iowa is not having a great offense, and Illinois is having the ability to keep pace with them. So, in terms of predicting, I'm still going to go Iowa, but it's going to be decided by less than a touchdown, I think.
All right. I mean, that's a good prediction there. All right, this is a big one. Both teams that lost the following week to Big 12 teams. Texas at number 13, Baylor.
Baylor
all the way.
Yeah. Texas isn't back. Sorry, guys.
No, they're not. I will say this, and again,
I don't. A surprise team this year. I think this will be their first 10-win season in a while. Whether it comes this week or next week is to be determined still, but I think they get that 10th win.
I don't like to be opinionated on the podcast, but I will say this. I do not like Texas or Baylor. Texas for a number of reasons. Baylor, I just not really like them that much. Don't get me wrong. I think extremely highly of A, the school, and B, the football program. But for some reason, I just don't like them. I don't know why. Texas, there's multiple reasons. But, I just do not. I don't know. It's kind of a weird tangent that I went on there. But I have something against Baylor for some reason. But, of course, I don't really like Texas. And Iowa State beat them last week, which I was extremely hyped for. I probably shouldn't be saying my fandoms here on the podcast. I've been told numerous times. Probably shouldn't say that. But, hey, sometimes you got to be opinionated. Am I right?
Always.
Alrighty. Okay, here's a big game. Number 24, Texas A&M at number 4, Georgia.
I want to say that A&M pulls it out, but got to go with the Dogs. Boy, Tommy Bush, guy who started over me at receiver in high school, plays for Georgia. Going to stick with him on this one.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that whole thing that you were talking to me about. Mm-hmm. Alrighty, and we'll do the last matchup here. TCU at number 8, Oklahoma.
So, I'm going to use this one as my blowout that hopefully gets wrong. So Oklahoma's going to blow out TCU. Hopefully TCU wins now.
Oh, so you're doing the reverse psychology here. So you win either way.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, what'd I tell y'all? Smartest guy in Austin College. No doubt. Okay. On the baseball team, for sure.
I'm up there. I'm not going to, there's no way I'm going to say I'm the smartest at Austin College or even on the baseball team when James Wiseman exists, but.
I have not talked to him yet.
Very smart guy. But you'll get to meet him during the season. But
Gotcha. I mean, we'll have to see how that goes. But, of course, smart of you to actually do that. No guest has done that yet. I'm just saying. Hey, future guests, if you're watching this trying to learn some things, take that for notes. If you think that one team might be upset, do what Voos did over here. Hey, that's a smart play right there. Alrighty. We'll shift now over to NCAA basketball. This guy has been regarded as the upcoming number 1 pick in the 2020 NBA draft. James Wiseman's going to have to sit out 12 games this season. Actually, 11 now because they played last night. Now, this is the most interesting part of this suspension for academic ineligibility. He has to pay $11,500 to a charity of his choice. And I see, yeah, you're confused too. I was confused as well reading this because the one thing you might be saying to yourself, well, now they can get paid for their image and likeliness, but that doesn't start in effect till 2021. So first of all, that doesn't make sense. And number two, how can you just say, he could pull $11,500 out of his pocket, just throw it at a charity that he wants to? I get that he's probably making some money behind the scenes. There's no way that he isn't. But I want to ask you, what do you think about this NCAA suspension for James Wiseman, and how do you think he's going to bounce back this year?
So the original suspension was only 2 games, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they fined him and suspended him more after he.
Yeah, it was supposed to be then afterwards for the full season.
Yeah.
And then he appealed it. They limited it down to 12, but now he's got to pay that $11,500.
Memphis denies that Wiseman himself had any knowledge of the money going to his parents or whatever it was. I don't buy that, but I also don't think that a random charity donation is relevant to anything. I mean, I understand that that's the amount that the Wiseman family was paid by Penny Hardaway, but shouldn't Hardaway or Memphis have to be the one to cover the financial burden of whatever monetary fines should be implemented, if any, in this case? Why are you... I mean, Wiseman is most likely going to be a top 3 pick in the draft.
Oh, he's probably going to be number 1.
Cole Anthony, LaMelo Ball.
They're saying right now, I looked at, for ESPN, they have them projected, it's going to be James Wiseman, Cole Anthony, and then LaMelo Ball. And even so, LaMelo Ball has been balling overseas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely see. I mean, it just depends on preference, I think, between the 3. I don't think there's no Zion this year, I don't think.
True.
Like,
there's no, one dominant guy.
I don't think James Wiseman's even a Ja Morant. Like, I think he's a very good player, but he's just not somebody that this is the guy I'm going to take for sure. Like,
because all 3 of those guys are really on the board. Of course, Cole Anthony during his debut set not only a UNC record but an AAC record as well. LaMelo Ball, of course, we've known the hype for a long time, and now he's really starting to fill into his figure. And then James Wiseman out of the blue has just been dominating so far in this stage of the game. It'll be interesting, definitely, to see how that all happens and how he bounces back. But moving on, of course, to MLB. When we talk about news that dropped, this was the biggest discussion last week on the podcast, and this is what we opened up with last week. And this was the whole thing about the Astros cheating. And now they've had even more evidence come out that there have been shots from behind the dugout towards the clubhouse area that they had TVs, monitors, and then as well next to it a garbage can of them relaying the game back and forth. And when the pictures were taken, were right after the game, and they were taking it down, and they had towels blocking it. I want to ask you, because I asked my former guest last week, Gage Linhart, about this whole thing, and we both kind of agreed on it. But I want to ask you, what do you think about this whole suspension? And then even so
Suspension?
or sorry, not suspension, this whole thing. Well, yeah.
Situation?
This whole situation. But then, yeah, I was jumping my sentence there. And then what do you think this is going to be? Do you think it's going to be some suspension of some sort, maybe not getting international free agents, maybe losing a lot of some money, not being able to sign any free agent? Or do you think it could be the harshest of possibly they lose that 2017 banner?
I don't think they lose any banners. I mean, I hadn't seen the last part that you just talked about with the monitors in the dugout and stuff. I knew about the center field camera and the banging, curveball, fastball, that sort of deal. But I had not heard the last part. So I'm sort of processing this as I'm talking. But I definitely don't think they'll be allowed to sign, or they'll lose their international money slot. I think that makes a lot of sense. I also could potentially see conditional draft picks being lost, that sort of deal. Or there's definitely going to be a big fine for the organization, but as to how far and how serious this case is, I mean, I don't think we've seen anything of this scale in recent years.
Yeah, and even so, that's what the commissioner was talking about.
The Red Sox have probably been the closest one that I can think of, and even so, I don't remember their punishment as being particularly harsh.
No.
So,
But then again, you also have to think this was at the highest stage in the game.
If you listen to Astros conspiracy theorists, like Astros fans, but
basically, that's basically what it is.
They'll say every team does it. I don't think every team is going to find little ways to try and get around this.
But no one's going to use that. And this is what I was talking about right here.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just doesn't look good.
Yeah, if I could put it right now, I wish I had it like on cue ready to go. But it's definitely something. If you want to see what I'm talking about, look up Astros cheating on Twitter, and it'll be a Barstool tweet. There's multiple tweets on here about it, but that's just one of the very few. And then moving on with MLB, the New York Yankees released Jacoby Ellsbury on his 6th year of his 7-year, $153 million contract. At one point, Ellsbury was one of the better players in baseball. Everyone basically knew his name. He was a household name at one point.
For sure.
And I just want to ask you, seeing this, and especially with us growing up with all these names, especially guys like Jacoby Ellsbury. One thing I just saw, this is another thing, the whole 2020 ballot just came out, and I saw Josh Beckett was on there.
Oh, wow.
Manny Ramirez, JJ Putz, a lot of these guys who we both grew up being able to watch, and possibly even in person if you went to a game. So I want to ask you now, with that age of baseball slowly drifting out into the sun and basically retiring, how do you think about that? Especially, even so, one that I like to especially pinpoint is when Roy Halladay died a couple years ago. That was, to me, one of the bigger ones because I grew up him being one of my favorite pitchers.
Shocker. Yeah, it's like, wow. But as somebody who has rooted for the Red Sox for a long time, I'm a big Ellsbury fan, even if he's on the Yankees now. Or was on the Yankees, I guess. He's not anymore. But, even though he was a premier player, they definitely overpaid for him, especially given the level of money that was handed out in contracts at that time, the amount of years in which he was on, and his age. He's in his late 30s at this point. You don't pay somebody... It's 153 that you don't pay somebody $23 million a year when they're in their late 30s unless they're a Mike Trout caliber. Mike Trout caliber player's getting 40. But
oh, heck yeah. He might even be getting more.
Yeah, but you don't pay. He was definitely well above average at that point, but he never was a superstar, and he got what at that time was close to superstar money. Like, I'm a big Ellsbury fan. Just watching him run down baseballs in center field with the Red Sox when I was younger was awesome. But, it makes sense for the Yankees to release him. And it also just... I hate how people I like always tend to go to the Yankees. That's like Mark Teixeira was always my favorite player when he was with the Rangers. Yankees. Just everybody from teams I like who I like usually ends up with the Yankees, with Ian Kinsler being the one exception. I'm glad he's never put on the pinstripes.
I wouldn't jump on that so quickly.
Just so quick, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's everyone's dream to wear the pinstripes one day. I think it is because not really.
Not if you grow up as a Red Sox fan.
Okay, well, yeah, there's an exception there. But even so, with Red Sox, they want to throw on, the red and white or the white and red.
Or even a Dodgers fan.
I mean, those are the teams you want to grow up to play for. Play in that atmosphere, either at Fenway, at Wrigley, Yankee Stadium, wherever that may be. You want to go and play that, and especially with everyone that really either doesn't hate the Yankees or is not really a big fan of one given team. Yeah. Your dream is to go and play where Babe Ruth once played. And all these guys now, of course, it's not in that same stadium, but it's the same legacy that they left behind. So we are going to take a very, very quick commercial break. When we come back, we are going to be talking about the NBA. We are also going to be talking about the NFL. Sorry about this. We're going to be talking about the NFL, and then we will take one more quick commercial break and then turn it over for a little bit of NHL hockey. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back. The Max Danielsen Show is proud to announce Gage's Granite as an official sponsor for the Saturday podcast. Gage's Granite is a family-run company operating nearby in the Dallas Metroplex. They offer custom granite, travertine, onyx, and marble countertops to homeowners and businesses since 2000. Give them a call today at 972-243-6097 or visit gagesgranite.com or on Facebook and Twitter. You can also stop by the main showroom located at 2427 Glenda Lane in Dallas. Gage's Granite, a proud sponsor of the Max Danielsen Show.
Hey guys, this is Jason with Lacrosse Monkey. Are you looking for a place to shop for your next athletic season? Monkey Sports is here to help. Whether you're looking for baseball, hockey, or lacrosse gear, if you can dream it, we've got it. We provide both the latest and best on the market equipment for your athlete. Stop by and visit us at 105 West Bethany Drive, right off of US 75 in Allen. Monkey Sports, a proud sponsor of the Max Danielsen Show.
And welcome back to the Max Danielsen Show. Where we left off, we were talking about college sports, especially football and basketball, and then we also looked into a little bit of the MLB and what was going on there. But with moving forward here, let's talk about the NBA. And the one big guy who has been dominating, and I know I see the face because one of the teams that I'm about to talk about, he played against, and that is Luka Doncic. We all knew he played extremely well last year, but even so this year, he's been a whole different animal. For his last two games against the Spurs, they won 117-110, and he had 42 points, 12 assists, and 11 rebounds. And then against the Warriors the following night, blowing them out 142-94, he put up 35 points, 11 assists, and 10 rebounds. So just a couple of facts here about him, about Luka this season. Luka and LeBron are the only players in NBA history to have a 40-point triple-double under the age of 21. In the last 20 seasons, him and Allen Iverson are the only players to outscore, out-rebound, and out-assist a team in a quarter. And he's also the fifth player in history to average a 30-point triple-double over a 10-game span, with the other four being Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, and as well Oscar Robertson. And now the question becomes, with all of this, and especially comparing that to that he's doing better in his second year to guys than LeBron James, and even so, Magic Johnson, blanked on that name for a second. The question comes up, is he one of the best to ever play so far? Or at least what we're seeing.
Hold your horses.
I know hey, you just got to ask. That's what the whole show is about, talking to my guests, seeing what they think, talking about their opinion and what they believe will happen. Now, I'm not saying I don't think he's yet one of the best to play. I think he could become that, and I think if everything goes to plan,
he has the potential to be a top 5 all-time point guard.
Oh, 100%. But yeah,
I don't think he'll pass the likes of a Magic Johnson, Oscar Robertson, Allen Iverson. I don't think he'll quite get to that level, but he could. I mean,
the sky's the limit, honestly, for him. It really is. But I mean, and of course, I'm not saying that. I actually saw this on Twitter. Someone is asking, "Is Luka the best to ever play?" I was like, "Why not throw it in the podcast and see what you had to say about that?" So I'll let you take it away if you have any other things to say about this whole situation.
So the best to ever play is a difficult question because given that I am still only 19 years old, my actual basis of who I saw play is pretty small. So I can't really make a distinct argument in the LeBron-MJ argument because I never saw MJ play. I never saw the quality of basketball that MJ played against. I wasn't.
Well, at least when you did see him, he was at the very, very tail end of his career, and that was like towards the 05-06 season.
I wasn't really. I mean, there wasn't enough. I wasn't watching a ton of basketball then. That wasn't the Spurs.
So. It's very true, yeah. So and that's even when the Spurs were dominant back then.
And so I'm not willing to put my money on one side or the other in the MJ LeBron debate. Unless LeBron just manages to blow every stat MJ has out of the water and make it absolutely clear, which is possible. I mean, I think they're relatively even at this point. I don't have a horse in this race. It's a debate I keep myself out of. Also, looking at Allen Iverson and Oscar Robertson and the quality of defense that was played when they were in the league, but also conversely the quality of the athleticism that was in the league. There's a lot to weigh when making a best of all time argument.
Yeah.
So you'd have to find some way to control for age and time, athletic ability, and just like what they were up against. And just the best way to do it is to look at how dominant they are relative to the rest of the league rather than comparing individual stats. Just the best player of all time is someone who just absolutely dominates the league for a period of time, over a long period of time. Like, I mean, LeBron has been doing that since he came into the league. MJ did it while he was in the league. There are a lot of players right now that have the potential to put up the numbers Luka's putting up offensively. James Harden, for instance, Russell Westbrook, both on the Rockets. While they're together, I'm not convinced that they'll be as good together because they're only one basketball. Then LeBron's still in the league. You got guys like Kawhi, Giannis. I mean, there's a lot of people with the offensive potential that Luka has right now. Now, Luka's going to continue to develop and become a better player, but even though he's so young, he came into the league already as a very mature player.
Yeah.
So, how much higher his ceiling can get is not necessarily a question of his skill going up. I mean, his three-point shot might become a little more consistent. It's already very good. There are things like that, but it's just, does he have more room to develop athletically? And if he does, I mean, that's going to be even scarier.
Yeah.
But with just the offensive potential of pretty much any of the top 10 players in the league right now, and Luka's a top 20 player for sure. There's no doubt about that, I think. But with the offensive potential of pretty much anyone in the top 10, they can put up the numbers Luka is putting up. Now, will they do them as consistently as the stretch he's on right now? Maybe once every other season, every few seasons. But what he's doing right now is very rare, as you talked about earlier.
Right.
But it's more a matter of how much better can Luka be than everyone else in the league to determine whether he will eventually become someone who should be considered an all-time great, is how I think the best way to measure it is. Just overall dominance is the best metric.
I mean, hey, that's one heck of an analysis there. And, I mean, you make a lot of really good points. Of course, it's very hard to pass not only Magic Johnson, but you also have Oscar Robertson.
Who averaged a triple-double.
Oh, I mean, heck, that dude was I've watched – unfortunately, I never got to watch him play, of course, but I've seen highlights of him. I've read his stats. I mean, averaging a triple-double in itself is hard to do. And that just shows you the eliteness of what Oscar Robertson could do. And even so, Allen Iverson, who's one of the most underrated point guards, in my opinion, in recent history, and that's because he didn't win a ring, which is a really, really big argument for that whole LeBron and MJ thing, is that Michael Jordan won 6 rings, but LeBron has, lost 6 and has won only 3. But then you think about it as well, LeBron has taken teams that shouldn't have been in the finals and did that for 9 years in a row. It's just
only 2 or 3 of those teams shouldn't have been in the finals.
That's it. That Cleveland Cavaliers team, or actually most of the Cleveland Cavaliers teams.
With Kevin Love, like the last 2, the 2017, 2018 with the Cavs.
Yeah, and even so, back in 2009.
And his first one, yes. Those were the 3 that I...
And who won that finals? May I ask?
The 2009, I believe he did. Which finals?
His first one.
His first one. His first one was 2005, right? Or was
No. It was 2009. Because remember, it was right before that was the season. Then he left to go to the Heat.
I know the Spurs beat the Cavs, and I guess
that was that one.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to serve you
I know
right
the
there.
Spurs beat the Cavs in LeBron's first final. I just thought it was earlier than 09.
No, but yeah, that was the big thing. And then flipping it to the other side of the NBA, Ben Simmons in his 172nd career game finally hit a 3-point shot.
Yeah, it was 2007.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, dang. It was 2007?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The Spurs didn't win it in 09.
Oh, dang. All right. Oh, yeah, that's right. Duh. Lakers won that year. Jeez Louise. That seems like so long ago. And even so, with the NBA, guess who's back on top? Celtics and Lakers again.
Surprise.
The
Celtics
everything comes right back to full circle.
The Celtics are a surprise this year, though.
And I'm expecting them to go down, especially with Gordon Hayward now being out for a while.
He's out again. I honestly didn't even see that. Wow.
Yeah, no, he fractured his hand.
Of course he did.
I like Gordon Hayward, don't get me wrong, but he is the most injury-prone player in the league, besides Derrick Rose.
There you go.
Well, actually, knock on wood here, but, Derrick Rose has actually been healthy for a while.
I hope he continues to be healthy.
Oh, yeah. Over a year ago, dropped that 50-point game for the Timberwolves. I remember watching that live, and I was like, wow, this is one of the best performances I've seen. And that was what we missed out on with Derrick Rose. Unfortunately, his knees are some of the worst in basketball. It's just one of the biggest what-ifs, especially with also Greg Oden.
He makes me look like I have knees.
That's true. I was about to say that, actually. But then I guess let's move on from the NBA and go into the NFL. And that is, for the first time since the Super Bowl where the Eagles upset the Patriots, Patriots actually beat the Eagles in this one. 17-10. Tom Brady went 26 for 47 and only threw 216 yards, while Carson Wentz went 20 for 40 with 214 yards and 1 touchdown. The biggest question for right now, the Eagles, because they're in a tough spot, especially with the NFC East having to go up against the Cowboys, where the Cowboys only have to worry about beating the Eagles because Redskins are not good. Giants aren't good anymore. Well, actually, the Giants are on the rise. Then again, you have Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley coming up through the ranks. But I want to ask you, for the Eagles, do you think it's time to move on from Carson Wentz?
I honestly would have tried to keep Nick Foles around.
Yeah.
Just his ability to win when it matters is been off the charts in terms of taking the Eagles on playoff runs and things like that, which Wentz hasn't shown he can do. And Wentz is also very injury prone. I still think he has a lot of potential and a lot of talent. And the Eagles aren't going to be a high enough draft pick to where they're going to be able to draft just a superstar quarterback.
Right.
I think you got to stick with Wentz at this point, unless, Cam Newton's not better than Carson Wentz, I don't think. There's no one really on the trade market and no one who's going to be an upcoming free agent because NFL teams have such control over the ability to lock up their quarterback with the franchise tag that there's not really any way of finding just a world beater quarterback on the free agent market that they're pretty much stuck with Wentz at this point. He's not a Mitchell Trubisky who's just been a complete bust.
Yeah.
I can see I think the Bears right now have the best odds to get Cam Newton. Yeah. Or most.
But the big question then for the Bears is how much is that really going to affect them?
Not much, I don't think.
Right.
I mean, Cam Newton hasn't done anything of recent. I mean, he hasn't won a game in the past year.
And especially even so for the Bears competing in probably the hardest division in football with the NFC North. That'll be interesting though. It's definitely something. I definitely think when I think of quarterbacks that are in to win, I think of Nick Foles and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Those are guys who, when it comes down to it, if you give them the ball, they're going to figure out a way to win games. And they're great backup quarterbacks. And even so, now Nick Foles is getting that starter opportunity in Jacksonville. And now he's just coming back, taking Mishew's place. So definitely will be interesting not only to see if Carson Wentz could come back, because before that big injury that he had, he was in the discussion for an MVP candidate. Now, he hasn't lived up to that since then. But, of course, I mean, everyone could turn their careers around. But it will be interesting to see not only how the Eagles respond with Wentz, but as well how they respond to the Cowboys. Another big game in the NFL this week was the Vikings coming back down 20-0 at the half to beat none other than the Broncos, 27-23. Kirk Cousins in that game had a career day, going 29 for 35, 319 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
A career second half, you should say.
Yeah, career second half, yes. But I mean, the one.
Kirk Cousins.
Why
is
the
MVP
Broncos?
Now.
Huh?
Kirk Cousins is an MVP candidate now. He's not going to win, but
oh yeah.
He's
well, I mean, everyone's it. I mean,
just his first 4 games were just absolutely awful. But he's been as good as any quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah. Other
than Lamar Jackson, I'd say, and probably Russell Wilson over the past 8 weeks. Like, I mean, without a doubt. Teams that were down 20 points at halftime were 0-99 before this weekend. Now they're 1-99.
That's, I mean, that is the Broncos right there. If that doesn't scream Denver, I don't know what does. And the one thing I keep reverting back to is that Super Bowl with the Seahawks, where everyone's like, oh, you know, Broncos are going to easily come on top of that, and then got blown out by the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. But, I mean, that's even so with talking about, like the MVP candidate, like you said, that Kirk Cousins could be up there. That's also like saying Dak Prescott is.
Yeah,
and even though Prescott is having one of the best years of his career, you also have to look at the caliber of teams he's playing.
Oh, for sure. The Cowboys have been a paper tiger in terms of who they play.
They definitely are. I mean, the first 3 games, everyone's like, oh, he's an MVP. And I'm having to tell people, I'm like, you played the Pop Warner teams of the NFL, and you're saying he's an MVP candidate. And I was like, wait till you face the Saints. Prescott fell there. Wait till you face the Packers. Prescott fell there. And it's just going to keep going on and going on. And
the
I
Saints
know
against Teddy Bridgewater at that.
Against that's another thing. I mean, they are such an on-paper team. They have, if you look on paper, like even so, I forget who we were talking about earlier.
That's why, I mean, the Eagles can compete in the East with Carson Wentz at quarterback. Yeah. I mean, Dak Prescott's not a world beater. He's not a $30 million quarterback as he's asking for.
Oh, he shouldn't be.
I hope the Cowboys pay him that, though.
Oh, I think we all do. That would help so much.
There was a meme that on the NFL memes page on Twitter that said, Eagles fans are now donating to the Cowboys to help pay Dak $35 a year or something like that. I mean, it's just I've always been a Dak hater. I don't think he's good.
I think he's an average quarterback at best.
I'm willing to say that now. Prior to this year, I wouldn't have. I've been in the past not even calling him a top 25 quarterback. I'm saying he was worse than that. I think he's kind of proved me wrong to a degree there. But I mean, yeah, I agree. Average at best.
And even so, like, Dak had a great rookie year, but that was also because Zeke had an outstanding rookie year. And Zeke has always been a dominant running back in the NFL when he's on the field out of trouble. But even so, with knowing that the Cowboys are going to throw that 35 mil or 30, or actually he was asking for 40 at one point, that only means that that's going to make a decision where who are you going to release from the defense or who are you going to release for the offense? Because they got to re-sign Amari Cooper still and a lot of their young guys off the defense.
Is Amari Cooper coming back?
They have not extended him yet, but I would imagine that Jerry Jones is going to throw him some serious money. Another team, like you were saying, with the whole Lamar Jackson, he went off this game, 17 for 24, 222 yards, and 4 touchdowns, and they stomped, unfortunately, the Texans, 41-7.
Yeah, that was right.
And I want to ask you, you said this already, that he's one of them, but do you think he actually has a shot at being the MVP?
Oh, of course. Him and Russell Wilson are neck and neck right now, I think. And if the Panthers get in the playoffs, McCaffrey should be up there with them because he literally is their team.
I mean, he really is.
Him and Luke Kuechly.
I was trying, okay, so I'll tell you a story here. I was debating with 49ers fans about it, and I was talking about they haven't really faced.
49ers have fans?
They have so. Oh, you thought Cowboys fans were delusional? 49ers fans are even worse. Like, I didn't realize you can go past that. And they were talking about, oh, we beat this team and this team. And they're like, we won on a day with 3 inches of rain. And I'm like, you're trying to justify a win against the Redskins of all teams? And then they're like, well, we beat the Panthers. I'm like, you mean the one-man show of Christian McCaffrey? I was like, all you got to do, stop the run game. You stop the Panthers.
Beat the best white running back in the history of the NFL. No.
I mean, he could go down as that. He could easily go down there. And even so, today, he was named to the 99 club for Madden. He just got
deservedly.
Oh man, I mean, he is not only yes, he 100% deserves it. 100%. He has surprised everyone. He's on my fantasy team, doing really, really good.
I have McCaffrey and Lamar Jackson.
Oh, you got lucky there.
Well, I read a deal at the beginning of the season. It was like the just bold predictions deal. And one of the bold prediction was Lamar Jackson will score the most points overall.
Yeah.
And I bought it and drafted
I mean, that's one heck of a prediction there.
I was somebody on NFLfantasy.com, I believe, or Yahoo. It wasn't like I traditionally read like ESPN fantasy stuff, but it was somewhat unconventional. I was like, you know what?
I mean,
honestly, could see that.
What a hell of a prediction there. And it worked out for you. With the final thing for NFL before we go to a quick commercial break, this guy, and you knew we were going to be talking about him, Colin Kaepernick. Now, for the viewers that don't know what this whole thing was, originally he's got a workout schedule where 11 teams were coming. Then 24 teams said they were coming. And then once they got to the facility, they said, oh, wait, or Colin Kaepernick said, oh, wait, I want to go to a high school to do it an hour later, and I want my own receivers. And I believe only, I want to say, was it 12 of the 24 teams showed up? And even so, I mean, Stephen A. Smith said it best this week where I was looking at something. This is all a humongous publicity stunt.
Agreed.
No doubt in my mind. He says that he was denied for 3 years for the NFL, but you have to keep in mind, he left money on the table from the 49ers and declined an offer from the Broncos. He did not deny, he was not denied playing. He just chose not to because, and I 100% support him for his stance. I think it's great that you do take some stance. But then again, it's sports. You don't need to say all this. The simple thing is just keep politics out of sports. That's the one thing that sports was invented for. Okay, so while we say that, Voos just held it out a book. If you'd like to read the title there, Voos.
So it is a book by Clay Travis, who is a Fox Sports personality. Now, Clay Travis, I will explain a little bit more about him after I read the book because you actually have to understand where he's coming from because it's a very loaded title, I will say that. But the book is called Republicans Buy Sneakers Too, How the Left is Ruining Sports with Politics. And it's especially in regards to the Michael Sam case, the Colin Kaepernick case, stuff like that. Now, Clay Travis is not a Republican. He voted for Obama twice, if you follow politics at all. He is very independent, very pro-free speech. He's, in my opinion, one of the smartest guys or one of the smartest sports personalities in the business right now, though he definitely does say some controversial stuff and does say some controversial stuff in this book. However, the main point of the book is, as Max said, sports should not be political. What he talks about in the book is essentially that ESPN, seen as their business model, is threatened by the emergence of just the ability to access highlights and sports news from anywhere at any time, has decided to try and infiltrate politics into their sports so they can continue growing viewers, which as a result has led to polarization within the sports world. Now, we don't want polarization within the sports world. We want sports within the sports world. We don't want politics to be something that, if I want to read politics, I'll go read something from the Washington Post, New York Times, National Review, The Atlantic, a number of other sources. I'm not looking at ESPN to tell me that the gender of a bicyclist matters, as I got like some sort of ESPN alert the other day. Like,
Did you actually?
Yeah, I showed you it at practice.
Oh, that's right. Show me
I don't remember
that.
the exact, but it was just like
it was I don't remember either, but it was one of the most interesting notifications. Voos just pulls me over. He's like, "Look at this," and I read it, and I was like, "What in the heck?"
But back to Colin Kaepernick. So, back in February, him and Eric Reed came to a $60 to $80 million settlement with the NFL for quote unquote collusion. It was a collusion settlement, so that they claimed that they were being colluded against, and the NFL just decided to settle the case with them outside of the court. Didn't want to go through the process of the lawsuit, so they between them received like $60 to $80 million. Now, assuming that gets split up 30 to 40 million each, that's probably a year and a half worth of an NFL contract for Kaepernick, I'd imagine. Now, his Nike contract is, I believe, where is it? I want to say it's close to what a starting quarterback in the NFL makes per year. Is what he's getting yearly from Nike. So, in terms of his financial situation, his not playing in the NFL has not hurt him financially. He's not.
Oh, heck no. He has a ton of financial security.
He's not been in any struggles as a result of that. I mean, so if he's truly genuine in pursuing the end of police brutality in America, which, I mean, he cares about the issue. I'm definitely not saying that.
Right.
But from what it looks like, he's more trying to profit from his activism more so than he is actually trying to make change. Now, there are a number of things Colin Kaepernick should do differently if he actually wants to see change in America. The first being is to, I would say, take advice from the expert in civil unrest and that sort of stuff, Martin Luther King Jr. Following Martin Luther King Jr.'s steps to changing our society, which are collection of the facts to determine whether injustices are alive. I believe that there is, in fact, some proof that African Americans in America are treated differently than white people. I mean, I don't think he's at any fault there. Negotiation, which would mean just trying to talk it out, settle it, instead of just automatically taking a stance. So what Colin Kaepernick's doing, I'll go through the last two, which the last two steps are self-purification and direct action. So the main problem with Kaepernick's movement is that he is not taking direct action. What he's doing by kneeling for the national anthem, he's connecting the American flag, which is a symbol many Americans hold dear to police brutality, as something that's like just systemic injustice within America, and that just creates a bad image. Now, 93% of people do not, or have said that they think there should be less police brutality in America. It's not like we're talking like the civil rights movement, where a lot of people didn't think back then that blacks should have the same rights as whites, which is awful. I mean, this is a issue that many Americans could get behind if Colin Kaepernick would take a different route.
Yeah.
So if he actually cared about the issue, in my opinion, he would do something that would both A, improve his image, and B, like, take direct action in terms of, so if instead of kneeling before a football game where people just want to come and enjoy football games, start a movement in front of a police station or in front of something like that, or do marches, like do things that are actually relevant to the movement that you are trying to create. Kneeling on a football field is polarizing, and there's no need to be polarizing when most people would support the movement if it was done in a different light.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's a good... I keep saying this because it's very true. You have a lot of great analysis of each point that I brought up, and you take a look at in a different light than most people would think. Well, and especially, like you just said, with the whole like Colin Kaepernick thing, and about like that a lot of Americans would be with this entire movement if they didn't do something as polarizing as kneeling for the national anthem.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he definitely should be allowed to kneel for the national anthem.
Oh, 100%.
I'm very pro free speech. He can do what he wants.
I mean, that's your First Amendment right there.
But I mean, his protest wasn't successful. It hasn't really generated any change. I mean, if you want your protest to be successful and generate change, and it hasn't been doing so, you should probably think about changing it, in my opinion.
Right.
You want to do something that's going to be effective. I mean, also, part of the reason in which it's not been worth it for NFL teams to re-sign him, because I think he could definitely still play in the NFL.
The talent is not the question. He still has it.
I mean, he was the 26th most efficient quarterback in his last season or something like that, 26th best on 538's rankings. That puts him as a bottom-tier starter, top-tier backup, which, I mean, top-tier backup is probably about the right situation.
Yeah,
where
that's definitely where he needs to be.
He could start for some teams, some of the worst teams, but those teams are generally looking to develop younger quarterbacks more than looking for
an established quarterback.
Yeah, rather than looking for a guy who's in his young 30s who doesn't have a lot of time ahead of him and doesn't really have any potential to grow.
Right.
So, I mean, there are definitely teams that, without all the potential publicity and ratings drops, that should be willing to take him on. So, I think if he would change his method of protest, not stop protesting, but change his method of protest, just something that doesn't conflate the American flag to police brutality, then I think there would definitely be more of a chance for him to actually be signed by a team if that's what he wanted. I agree with you. That Stephen A. Smith video, I recommend everyone who's interested in the issue watch it. He breaks it down.
He really does. He brings in a lot of good points and really dissects the whole case and takes a look at, what is the main motive of Colin Kaepernick at this point of his career. And that's basically what it is. Alrighty. Well, after that, this extremely long tangent about the NFL, we're going to kick it over to a very quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the NHL, and then we're going to sign off for tonight's episode, or really today's episode, depending on when you're watching this. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back. The Max Danielsen Show is proud to announce Gage's Granite as an official sponsor for the Saturday podcast. Gage's Granite is a family-run company operating nearby in the Dallas Metroplex. They offer custom granite, travertine, onyx, and marble countertops to homeowners and businesses since 2000. Give them a call today at 972-243-6097 or visit gagesgranite.com or on Facebook and Twitter. You can also stop by the main showroom located at 2427 Glenda Lane in Dallas. Gage's Granite, a proud sponsor of the Max Danielsen Show.
Hey guys, this is Jason with Lacrosse Monkey. Are you looking for a place to shop for your next athletic season? Monkey Sports is here to help. Whether you're looking for baseball, hockey, or lacrosse gear, if you can dream it, we've got it. We provide both the latest and best on the market equipment for your athlete. Stop by and visit us at 105 West Bethany Drive, right off of US 75 in Allen. Monkey Sports, a proud sponsor of the Max Danielsen Show.
And we are back here on the Max Danielsen Show. Where we left off, we were talking about the NBA and as well the NFL and the whole big thing about Colin Kaepernick. And our last topic of tonight's broadcast is going to be with the NHL. So the Toronto Maple Leafs hired Sheldon Keefe as their newest head coach. He was the AHL coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs affiliate since 2015, and they fired their head coach Mike Babcock. They basically won Mike Babcock. He was the prized coach back in 2015. He led the team to a 173, 133, and 45 record. Not the greatest, but of course, it was still a winning record nonetheless. And of course, Mike Babcock is one of the best coaches that has been in the NHL in a while. And unfortunately for being on the Blue Jays, he just never really found his footing.
Yeah, so you said the Blue Jays? You mean Maple? Yeah.
Hey, at least I'm thinking same city here.
That threw me off for a second, but yeah, Babcock.
Maple Leafs. There we go.
Yeah, but Babcock, I can't say his name. Babcock was a very good coach for a long time with both the Red Wings and the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. And I mean, I definitely understand why he was one of the prize hires. Toronto, to my understanding, had pretty good years.
Oh, yes,
last year and the year before.
Yeah,
I think.
And even so, they got from the Islanders, John Tavares, who's one of the big prize free agents.
Out this year, correct? Like he's
he's out right now.
I think his firing was definitely a bit premature.
Yeah,
like I mean they're still only a game or two out of the wild card.
Yeah, they are. And even so, the season has basically just begun with that.
So, I mean, I'd figure I don't know if there's something else there, if there's just controversy between the players and the coach. I don't know. I don't know any inner details of the situation, but it seems like a premature firing.
It's a little bit of a premature one for sure.
It's not like a Cincinnati Bengals situation with
where you need to get him out of there.
Well, no, like where you just let him continue to suck for years.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, I mean that's what happened to the Browns.
Jones, yeah.
All right, and then as well, a big team that at the beginning when we started this podcast, this is actually the 10th episode of this podcast. We've been doing it right now for 10 weeks, and we first started off. The Dallas Stars were playing terrible. They barely had a win. Everyone was playing terrible. Everyone thought, oh, the Dallas Stars aren't going to live up to the hype. And they completely have done a 180 turning around. They're fourth in the Central Division. They're 12-8-2 and are still on a 4-game win streak. Their main leaders this season, Tyler Seguin having 18 points, 5 goals, 13 assists. Their young gun, Miro Heiskanen, who's becoming one of the best defenders in the league. He has 6 goals, 10 assists on the year. The big signing they got, a very low-risk, high-reward player, Joe Pavelski, who is really panning out. He's so far tallied 12 points, 5 being goals and 7 being assists. And then their captain, Jamie Benn, has really, really turned it around this year with 12 points, 4 goals, and then 8 assists. And even so, they also have another guy coming up through the ranks, which is Rue Pintz. He has been going off this season. He was the lead scorer for the Dallas Stars for the very first part of the year when really all the other players were still trying to find their footing.
Yeah, and Dallas Stars, according to ESPN, have been like on a 9-game goal streak or something.
Yeah, they are.
Their offense has been going crazy as of late.
And which they should be. They have one of the best offenses on paper. You have Jamie Benn, Alex Radulov. You also have Tyler Seguin, who's one of the best players in the NHL. You also have the depth of Joe Pavelski, and you also have defenders like John Klingberg and Miro Heiskanen. And even so, a really, really good goaltender who, unfortunately, is very injury-prone of Ben Bishop. I don't know if you watched the Western Conference. Was it the Western? I believe it was the Western Conference Finals, where in the final game of Game 7, Bishop actually made 50. It was either 40 or 50 saves throughout that whole game. And unfortunately, just the Stars could not pull away. And that's always been the biggest key problem for the Stars is their lack of defense. But even so, now you have really 2 young defenders. And even so, you also have guys like Steven Johnson in your lineup who are going to still produce. But with saying that, right now, I think everyone's starting to realize that, yeah, the Dallas Stars are the real deal. And speaking of the Dallas Stars, this week I made a pretty big purchase. I've been saving up for a while, and I am going to the Winter Classic. I don't know if you've read anything about the Winter Classic. I don't know. Do you know what the Winter Classic is?
I do not.
Alrighty, so I'll let you know about the Winter Classic. And even so, if any of my viewers are there, if you see me, say hey. I don't know, take a picture, whatever you want to do. But for you, Voos, what the Winter Classic is it's basically an outdoor game since they've done in 2009 where they're going all most of like football stadiums. I know they've done it at Ann Arbor. They've done a lot of places. And this year is going to be the first time that they're actually playing down south. And the biggest question was how are they going to keep the ice above or below freezing? Because, of course, Texas weather is just up and down. But especially, even so, they do have the technology to do that.
Oh, for sure.
But
Schlitterbahn in New Braunfels does a ice skating deal for like a month or 2 every year outside. So, I mean, I'm not worried about that part. But.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. And I'm excited to see it because, I mean, I did have to, pay a pretty penny, and it took a lot of time to save up for it. But, hey, I mean, that's just the one thing that has been on the top of my bucket list, and when I finally figured out they were doing it, I was like, I gotta get in somehow. So, and I've been saving money for about I don't know, half a year maybe. Finally got there, and thankfully that's all going to be there. So that is going to wrap up the 10th episode of the Max Danielsen Show. Jon, I just want to say thank you again for coming on. I have no doubt that so far you've been probably my best guest. You're also the longest segment we have, which is perfect considering the fact that you've really gone into every single topic, have assessed the issue, and as well analyzed it in a way that allows the common viewer to really understand and find their own perception of that topic. So I just want to thank you again. And I want to ask, do you have any final remarks?
Yep, I appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully you appreciated some of my hot takes and more of my freezing cold takes. And and you can catch me at on Twitter at Johnny Voos _14. That is.
I haven't asked people to put their social media.
JONYVOOS _14. Or at loneconservative.com where I write articles. So
yeah, don't forget. He also does. I don't know if you want to talk about a little bit of what you do on there, about like what you write articles for, if you wanted to.
Yeah, so sure. So basically with Lone Conservative, I cover mainly stuff about civil discourse, free speech. That's more of my area of interest in terms of politics. Just everyone should be nice to each other is kind of my theory with that. And just like, I try and generally find the good in what people are doing. I'm very optimistic in terms of how I think things are going to turn out with America. And as a result, that can lead me to being overly optimistic about how my sports teams are going to do, like the Spurs this year. But
yeah.
But anyways, you can check me out. It's loneconservative.com, and it's either a slash or a backslash, and then Jonathan Voos, JONATHNVOOS.
So yeah, make sure go and visit him on Twitter. Go give him a follow. Well worth it. He does put out some pretty funny tweets here and there, and as well.
They're funny to me. I don't know if they're funny.
Oh, I mean they're pretty funny. The one that you put out.
What matters is that I crack myself up. No.
That's. I mean, hey, that's sometimes what you got to do. Especially, I know in particular one that cracked me up was the whole Sherman train one. That was a great tweet. If you live in the Sherman area, you might understand what he's talking about there.
The train wasn't even a problem last year, and this year just at 2:30 a.m., which is like when I go to bed. I need to fix my sleep schedule, but 2:30 a.m. is around when I go to bed, and just between then, a train will come through and just lay on the horn for 4 or 5 straight minutes. It is very frustrating because, I already hate the sound of my alarm, and it sounds too close to it. But so it's just.
I mean, I remember when I first came here to Austin College, someone just randomly said, "There hasn't been a train through Sherman in 40 years," and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And I remember the first time. I remember where I was. It was it was me and then.
It's like 9/11. I remember where I was. No,
oh man.
No, that's a really hot take. But
that is a hot take. But I remember
that's what that line always makes me think of, though. I remember where I was. That's what
I mean, hey, anyways, that's the one thing. But I remember where I first heard it. My ex-girlfriend, my girlfriend at the time, was staying over at my place for the night, and I remember we were just going to bed, and I just hear this freaking train just freaking lay down the horn for about a solid 5 minutes, and there's no doubt in my mind he did it at least 100 times, and I was like,
I believe
why? I was just about to close my eyes. It finally took us about, I would say, an hour to get comfortable.
Oh, for sure.
And then because so if you live in the Austin College dorms or even in the I forget where I am right now, the suites, they have a twin bed. And
extra long, to be fair.
Twin extra long, to be fair, yes. But
otherwise
if you have ever tried to have someone in the same bed, it is a nightmare. Number one, you can't get comfortable. Number two, there's not enough sheets. And number three,
you bring your own sheets.
Well, yeah, you bring your own sheets, but then at the same time.
Problem.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you use the same amount of sheets that twin XL bed would have, then you don't have necessarily that. And even so, the worst part about it all is the fact it gets way too hot, and especially in the dorms. Thankfully here, I'm pretty sure y'all do have like your own separate AC unit, right?
Yeah, but the thermostat is very difficult to use. It took me like 30 minutes to figure it out, and
well, I mean, at least you figured it out. It's better
James
than
Adams messes with it all the time when he's over, so It takes me 30 minutes to figure it out every time.
I mean, shoot, at least it's better than the freaking sauna over at my dorm.
For sure.
Oh, it was so bad when I first got here. We have right now about 4 to 5 fans in our room constantly blowing. We have a portable AC, and it's still hotter than blazes. Well, I think that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Max Danielsen Show. Once again, thank you for watching, and as always, have a pleasant good morning, a good afternoon, or good evening to you, wherever or whenever you may be watching. Thank you.